if I can jump in there, Sarah Beth?
Please.
For many decades, our fundraising style was Rabbi Shulman, who passed away a few years ago, would go into a study with 5 men. I'm not going to say men and women. He would take 5 men into a study and say, this is our deficit. This is the check you will write. And that was how fundraising used to be done at Emmanuel. And they wrote their checks, and that was the budget. That was how the budget was met. About 12 or 15 years ago, we had the Chicago Jewish Day School as a major tenant, and they made up our deficit. And so because they paid about $250,000 in rent every year, and that kept us even. And so in that time, what we've been trying to do over the last few years is change our fundraising style from going into a room with just a few people and saying, please write these checks, to making the fundraising part something that the whole community participates in. So we've been working really hard to change our approach to fundraising, doing end of year calendar, like campaigns in December for end of year campaigns, fiscal year campaigns, legacy weekend for galas. But having CJDS leave as our anchor tenant has been a gap that's been hard to fill. And when we transition and start talking about 5959 with Amy, that's our big idea of how we can level things out. So Rabbi Shulman was an outstanding fundraiser and built a congregation at a time when institutional membership was just something families handled in a very different way. Sorry for butting in, Sarah Beth.
No, that's helpful. Thank you. Part of what we're also doing is we're re-looking at our whole model and our structure in an exciting way. And you're going to hear more about that with time. But we're engaging with a consultant, Dynamic Solutions. And he is going to be coming in. And again, we're going to share more later. But he's going to come in and help our whole community look at not just who we are, but like, where do we want to be? And what does that mean? And not just financial, but in terms of our outward reach to people and what does it look inside. So there's so many things we're going to be talking about, which is great because synagogues across the country have been pushed into this a little faster with COVID, but it's also an important topic that probably should have been happening 10 years ago because Leah referred to this, that the way our communities run now, membership to a synagogue is not what it was 30 years ago in terms of how people committed for a lifetime and it was a given and that's just what they did. So we need to move with the times. We need to see what people want and need. That's part of 5959 that you're going to hear about. So there's a lot of exciting stuff coming up in that. Ted and I are, Ted Rochelle, who is sorry he couldn't be here tonight, we're working hard on the budget to close that gap as much as possible this year, a number of ways. We are looking, I just have to put this plug in there, we are looking for more finance-minded people to come join these discussions, also known as a committee. But anyone who is open or interested, or if you have a partner in your home that might be, or someone else you know in the congregation, please send them my way. The more heads, the better, all the time. So that's the big picture. What are there some general questions that I can answer? I know that was just a 10,000 view look.
Well, I have a question. I understand that there is the funds from the capital campaign, but there are also some funds from various commitments that have been made to, or I should say, donations have been made over the years that are like dedicated funds for specific reasons. I was wondering if you could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, you know, I think
I can jump in on that one, Sarah Beth. So we are very blessed and lucky to have an endowment. The endowment right now sits at about $1.4 million. The endowment has a board, the guardians, the shomer, I can't say the word, has guardians. Shomrim, thank you. The endowment has Shomrim, who are separate from the Board of Trustees, because the last time that we had an endowment, it was spent down. So when we were given a gift that was unexpected, an unexpected gift, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, we set up the endowment and we set up the endowment committee. We also have a number of restricted funds that were given to us by different families over the years with specific end goals in mind. And we are currently in the process of one of the things that Sarah Beth has helped us lead, which is you're getting like a sneak preview tonight, is we've been changing our database from something called Hoverware to something called SchulCloud. And database talk can be kind of boring, but as we've been working on this transition of data, we've also been looking at all of our restricted funds. Are we still in touch with the families that initially made the donations? Can some of those restricted funds be moved to operations with permission of the families and their descendants who gave them? So we're doing a lot of research right now on our restricted funds, the families who gave them, to look at what can be moved to operating and what can be aligned with new mission. So that's the other part. Our $1.1 million operating budget is our annual budget. The 1.4 million is an endowment that's at, I think, at Morgan Stanley.
Yeah.
So that is meant to help be a sustaining fund for us.
Right. And the reason there are guardians, I forget the Hebrew word again, Iris.
Shomrim.
Thank you. Of the fund is to what Leah said. We want to make sure it's not used without thoughtfulness, because we don't want to dwindle it down so quickly. So we do have that there, which is wonderful, and we're trying to be very smart about how we utilize it for the congregation.
Thank you.
Okay.
I thought I heard Ed with a question earlier.
Yeah. I assume I'm unmuted, and that's a success right there. Maybe I shouldn't press my luck, but
you are unmuted.
Well, good. This is a crass question. How much is this consultant costing us?
Leah?
The consultant is $30,000, some of which has been donated.
I see.
Outside of our typical operating budget.
I see. And that was approved last year or something like that?
This is approved by the board this year. So Dynamic Change is run by Rabbi Lou Feldstein. He's a rabbi who was based in Atlanta, now based in Florida, who I met a year ago at a URJ event for synagogue presidents. And he works with congregations, reform congregations around the country who are trying to make sure they've got a strong footing to move into the future.
I see.
Yep.
So do we have like a rubber band in case he doesn't produce?
We do, yes.
Yeah, okay. Secondly, when we come out of the rabbi's study, Shulman's study on Saturday mornings, there's memorial plaques from a congregation that folded. Have we thought about harvesting those people, those families, to just, if we can locate them, to tell them that their loved one's plaque is now resident at Emmanuel, just to send them a letter? And yes, go ahead.
That's a great point. I know when those came over, I happened to be here, it was 10 years ago. And we did reach out to everyone. I don't know if that's been done since, and that's a really good question.
Yeah, because
great idea.
Yeah, I think it involves a little bit of research maybe, but it only takes one out of maybe every 20 names to to have them feel like they're doing something to remember their loved one. And then I think I may have mentioned this last time in passing, although it was not consonant with the discussion. You have not only the breakers, but the admiral in the neighborhood. And there may be somebody that we have in our congregation who are resident in those places. Those people don't generally have money maybe to invest, but on the other hand, maybe they have some pastoral needs, or they would like a visit from some representative of the congregation. I think that would be nice. And then who knows, they're on the edge of maybe being in a position to donate something. That would be like secondary to what we should be doing, which is going in there now that COVID seems to be not as big a concern. And we do have our internal agents. Some of you know Bindi. I'm not volunteering her, but she's a fabulous spokesman. And I think she would kind of like being asked to do something with her co-residents there. And so that's another possible pool. And then I have a general question. I don't know if this is the forum for it. I would like to know about the real estate just north of the parking lot. And I know Doug Farr, who is an architect, who at some point had drawn up a plan, as memory serves me, for a 10-story building that was thought to be a possible project for there. And, you know, we should be on top of that. And so, I mean, that would, I think, Dan, you probably maybe know about that. I'm not sure, but.
Yeah. So the property to the north of us that has the blue house situated on it, is that what you're referencing?
Yes.
Yeah. So that property is owned by an individual who we are in contact with. The contact started because.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
The Broadway Bank people, that family, or not?
Yeah, the Julius family, right?
She's my upstairs.
So,
she's my upstairs neighbor.
Okay.
And friend.
Oh, do you live in the building next door?
Right.
Malibu?
Yep.
Yeah, I met her once. Really nice people, and
Wonderful.
they we know them not only just because they're our neighbor, but we've actually done several transactions with them. When CJDS was here, CJDS rented that house and that property. So let's clarify this: we have no ownership at all of that property. It's just an adjacent property to ours. We know that there's a price that they would sell it at, and you've heard of the Blue House Committee. Maybe you have heard of that, which eventually became the Strategic Transformation Plan, which is also known as 5959. Not to overcomplicate that, but we basically spent 2 years coming up with a case study or the case for how, if we got that property, which is just south of $2 million, if we added that onto our campus, what value would it bring? Like, what's the return? You know, Ed, the idea of a multi-story building being built on that property is a zero-sum game. That's not even in the realm of reality at all. It's probably at best a 2 or 3 story property, which is what the current zoning provides. There's a pretty strong Sheridan Road group and a strong lakefront group. It's very complicated to get zoning changed. It takes a very long time, and the chances of it, I would say, are 0%.
Zero.
Like, there's no chance.
I'm on the board of ASCO, Association of Shared Road Condominium and whatever else it used to be owners. And everything, because like the building across the street that's finally going to be put up, that took him far more than a year to even get with him.
I guess, you know,
the lakefront protection will not allow anything to happen that neighbors would not agree to, or ASCO would agree to,
right,
or Osterman. Can't happen.
right.
Yes.
So I believe the zoning of that property, I think, is single family house, which is what's on there right now. But you know, it's a long history in that property. The case for adding value to our property is a much longer term proposition, and what we're trying to do in general, now I'm shifting to strategic transformation plan, which is the Blue House plan. Is it's sort of this new, like a new reality for Emmanuel, that we're, you know, going out of the model that we've been in for 140 plus years, you know, which is sort of synagogue, rabbi at the bima, people show up. Like, that model does not seem to be sustainable. So we're not leaving that model. We need to add on to that model. And what we've been trying to focus on is programming and getting more than Emmanuel to be part of our community. And that if we could progress in doing that, that potentially we actually might need a different kind of building, and even additional parking and the ability to, you know, move our cars around a little bit more. That would potentially warrant taking on that neighboring space, you know, that neighboring house. But we presented this to the Tawani Foundation, which is led by Colonel Pritzker, who's a member of Emmanuel, and suggested how much money it was going to cost, not only to acquire the site, but then to eventually, you know, build onto our building and do something special with it. And we're kind of at step one of that. And we did get some funding approved, which was directed towards the programming piece. And we've been able to bring on, I believe it's just a part-time person at this point with Amy Guth, forgive me if that's full-time, to really get the programming underway and have someone full-time focused on this new direction that we're trying to go.
And Amy and I are here to dive into it tonight.
Yep. So Ed, that's a very long answer to your question.
Oh, it's a very good answer.
There's a lot to unfold there.
Let me ask Dan, if possible, maybe I would be most useful if I were perhaps added as an observer to your Blue House group.
Great.
I do want to suggest that we've worked with Harry in the past. My building, the Renaissance, you know, south of Bryn Mawr. Are you familiar with it? I live in the Renaissance. Isn't that terrific?
Renaissance, south of Bryn Mawr. Okay.
It's an old co-op building. Charlton Heston was the mail boy when he was an acting student at Northwestern. Each apartment is half a block long. It's really a very incredible building with gardens on both sides. Aren't you familiar with it? Between Catalpa and Bryn Mawr.
I think I know. Yeah, I think I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, and then we battled that projected 18-story building on Catalpa and Sheridan, and kept that in abeyance. So we've worked with Harry, and I remember his mother fondly, and I think that he will be a servant of whatever ASCO and others want. But what they don't want is for our building to fail, and then that be potentially up for development. And they should really bend their thinking. This is for their own good, to keeping us here. And I get it, you know. So I'd like to do whatever I can. I know I can tell it's in able hands right now, but you know, it doesn't hurt to have someone else on the committee.
Yeah, and I welcome your being involved in this. But let me just, in all fairness, we've never asked for anything. We've never gone to the city and said, hey, we want to do this. Here's a drawing. Here's what. So from our perspective, I think we've been treated very well by the city. I think they've been transparent with us. We haven't said, hey, we want to build this 10-story building, and they said no. We've never come forward with anything. So I think that I'm optimistic that if we came up with a plan that we could get funded, and I don't see a 10-story building in that plan, but if we came up with something to redevelop our campus and maybe even bring that property in next door, I do think we would have some fans. We'd have to answer to parking because traffic is like one of the, tied for first with 10 other important issues. But, this is what we need to figure out. And so we've put together a plan, the strategic transformation plan that's got some ideas to get this started. And, we're trying to see where it evolves. And if it evolves into maybe we have a facility to house seniors, to house refugees, to do something else. Maybe it's just more open land that we can use, that the community can take advantage of. There's a lot of different ideas out there, but all fairness to the city, they've not rejected anything because they haven't seen anything from us.
Good. Okay,
and we have no fear. And also we don't. I didn't mean to project it in a way like there's 0% chance. Like I'm just trying to be realistic. Like guys, don't think that someone's going to buy our building or the building in the Blue House and they're going to build a 30-story high-rise. I think that is a 0% chance. I think though that we have a lot of friends in the alderman's office, and I think we have a lot of friends on Sheridan Road, and I do think that we are kind of we've been described as sort of a beacon of safety, and just a wonderful member of the community. And if we could sell a case going forward to redevelop our property, I think people will listen to us.
Yes. Okay. And then finally, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Leah.
Oh, I think Scott has had his hand up for a while, so I wanted to give him an opportunity.
Thanks. It's getting really tired. Yeah, I have a mundane question. I've enjoyed the conversation about the Blue House. The possibilities are very exciting. But my mundane question was in reference to the yearly deficit, how much has that averaged out to be over the last 5 or 6 years?
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So the question is, if we're running at an annual deficit, what is it averaged over the last couple of years? And I think, I could take a stab at that. I would guess it's about $100,000 to $150,000 a year. And what I also want to throw out as a board member, who, and by the way, I think we were balanced 2 or 3 years ago. We actually balanced it. It was either the final year of CJDS or the year after. And one number that Sarah Beth threw out was our budget's about $1.1 million. Well, 3-4 years ago, the budget was $1.3 million. So I can tell you that the budget, the endowment, anything that involves money going out the door is scrutinized and then turned inside out and then scrutinized, including the $30,000 that was just spent on this consultant. We were trying to hire that consultant in August, is my recollection. And it just stayed in the board meeting to make sure that really that money was being spent wisely. And I think we all knew it would be, but it just requires a lot of scrutiny, understanding that you are operating at a deficit. And by the way, the budget includes a fundraising piece. The $1.1 million budget includes $175,000 or $180,000 that's required to be fundraised. So that's how you're going to hit that $1.1 million, and we have not been hitting that number. We have not hit that fundraising goal since Rabbi Shulman passed away. There's a definite connection of our fundraising abilities.
Yeah, and with first under Judy Gadiel and then with Nancy Hagan Goldstucker, we're really trying to make sure that we're applying modern fundraising techniques to how we do things. Like I said, the end of year campaign. We did our hashtag 140 Reasons campaign. We did, Legacy Weekend was one of the things that got canceled during COVID that was so close to the COVID shutdown last year that we just simply never had an opportunity to reimagine as a digital gala. And so we leaned heavier on email, mail, end of year campaigns. And now that we're looking towards Passover, more people being vaccinated, the opportunity to build a safe plan to return indoors, we can start looking at some of the in-person fundraising opportunities we've had. But Nancy is certainly looking for people to join her with ideas on how to, whether it's event-based or how we make the ask or what is the theme going into next year. COVID was a challenge for us on the fundraising side.
One thing
We did, just so people know, the payroll protection, the PPP loan, we did get one of those. That helped our budget this year. Most of that the payment will be waived. So we did have some ways that we're surviving COVID better than expected. Thank God.
And I think what's exciting about fundraising coming up is as we work with Dynamic Change, sorry, I kept saying solutions, Dynamic Change and Lou Feldstein, we are going to be creating a really great story to share with the community for fundraising, which is always, it just makes the ask that much easier, because I think we're really going to come up with some amazing ideas and get people excited. And that's just going to, I think, tremendously help with our fundraising efforts. And I apologize, I have to put a child to bed, so I have to jump off, but everyone should have my email, and I'm going to put it again in here. Please reach out with any follow-up questions from this evening. I'm happy to help.
Thank you, Sarah Beth, and thank you for pinch hitting for some folks that couldn't make it. That was really nice of you. Thank you.
Good night.
Sarah Beth.
My pleasure.
Thanks, Sarah Beth.
All right, so we just tackled a lot, went on a couple tangents in a good way. I think we do want to hand the floor over to Amy Guth, but before we do, I just wanted to make sure there aren't any more questions or concerns about fundraising or finance that we want to get surfaced now. Okay, we can always do that at another time, and you can always send us messages for any ideas or suggestions you have. So Leah, can I turn it over to you, and we can turn it over, introduce
Yeah. So we're excited to be joining you tonight, Amy Guth and I. I'm our current president. I'll be wrapping up my term in a couple months at the beginning of May. David Rakowski will be taking on the role. And Dan Smolinski and I have both spent a lot of quality time with the plan that you're about to learn more about. Now, I had put in the chat the link to, and I'm going to put it again. In December, we did a couple town halls where we presented the strategic plan. So what we're going to do tonight is not rehash that presentation, but instead tell you where we're at today. But I wanted you to have access to it in case you weren't at those meetings or hadn't watched it yet. And it doesn't mean we won't answer questions or talk about it, simply that you can watch the TVOD recording, so to speak. But what I did want to share tonight, and I'll go quickly and then Amy will jump in, was a little bit of how we got here. Now, some of this Dan has described to you already, but this was a question I heard in week 1, was what are plans for the future, and there are lots of rumors, some of which we've already dispelled about the Blue House. But since about April of 2018, we've been working on the idea that Amy Guth is now on staff to like put into action. This is a long time coming. There have been a number of different committees. A lot of people have been involved. And one of the exciting things Amy's going to do in the next month or so is also kick off a couple working groups to really get in and support the idea, but with like clear jobs for our volunteers to do. So April of 2019, the 5959 steering committee was formed. The co-chairs were me, Erin Gadiel, and Maria Siegel. December of 2018, the Blue House Committee was formed, which was more specifically answering the question, if the Tawani Foundation helped us purchase the Blue House, what would we do? And as we dived into that and thought about entrepreneurial ways that we could use our property and use our energy, the Tawani Foundation hired for us a consultant called Plant Moran. And Plant Moran helped us with a business plan that is now 5959. Last winter, Amy, Rabbi Morantz, and I attended a virtual program at Columbia Business School for spiritual entrepreneurs to think about the business plan and how of the changing of changing how you use a religious building, a religious space. April of 2020, we did our second presentation to Tawani, and this summer in July, we signed a grant agreement. That grant agreement was for $50,000 to be used towards staffing, and also a $50,000 challenge grant also to be used towards staffing. Because what we said to Tawani was, our volunteers are wiped out, and we need your help to hire the right people to help us really push this idea forward. And so in February of 21, our event senior planner, Amy Guth, started. And then this presentation, there were questions from, so this presentation was our interim stewardship report that we wrote for the Tawani Foundation. This was our January report to explain what have we been up to. And there were some questions about engagement, who's coming to programs, who are we? And so this interim report that we wrote really helps answer that question, because we had answered this question for Tawani. So we have weekly and bi-weekly classes at the congregation that are led by our clergy. We tend to service, our people that come to our events tend to be over 50. We have been working hard to get some of our younger congregants involved. We've got beginner adult Hebrew, we've got Torah study. We have monthly events and limited series. So there's the Melton program that's happening now, Tikkun Olam Book Club, Torah Toast, which is specifically focused on parenting, on parents and people involved in the religious school. We had the Ekra Circle of Solidarity and Mourning, which was a daily prayer circle after George Floyd was murdered. We did wellness events, social events, participated in Shulman Senior Voices with Rush. And we've also done a number of special Shabbat experiences. So these are all the things we got done before Amy joined us. And this is us trying to figure out how do we deliver digital experiences? How do we get comfortable testing ideas? And if they don't work, moving on to the next idea. But I wanted to share that we had done this interim report for our funder. just to like, this was to tell Tawani what we had been up to, but I think it's also nice to share with you. I know that many of you have attended these events, but this is how we talk to our funder about it. So that's how we got here on one foot, which is that for the last 3 years we've been talking. This summer we got some funding, and now Amy Guth is on board, and she is going to help us actually test the ideas and see if all this talk can take action. So with that, Amy, I will turn it over to you, and then we'll take questions.
Great, thanks, Leah. Do I have screen sharing privileges here? Looks like I do. Here we go. So I put together perhaps it looks just like Leah's presentation. We like this one photo a lot. So I kind of whipped this together for you today to show you kind of where we are right now, taking from where Leah has been, or what Leah has just described, to what's next and what's been happening. So I've been, as of tomorrow, I've been here for 3 weeks in this capacity, but I've been a member for about 14 years. So it's very meaningful to me to be on this side of things at Emmanuel. But I just wanted to just at a very high level kind of take you through some of the things. Okay, so when we talk about 5959, because it's gone through so many iterations and so many conversations, what I thought was really valuable about the training that we attended at Columbia Business School that Leah mentioned was that we were really pushed very, very hard by the rest of the cohort and the leadership team there from START and from Columbia Business School to really hone in on this idea of what it is we're trying to build and what's doable, what's possible, and do so in a way that's iterative, meaning don't wait until everything is completely constructed and then try, but get out of the gate and start trying, get a lot of feedback, and then tweak as you go and keep learning and keep growing. I really believe in that iterative approach to doing things. So when we talk about 5959, this is what we're talking about. It is a Jewishly based cultural and community destination to service Chicago with programming, speakers, panels, and author events. That is the most succinct possible way to say all of the things. In a minute, I'm going to show you kind of some buckets of programming of what we're looking at. But when we talk about this programming, we're talking about some of it at the building. We're talking about a lot of it virtually for the immediate future, but also rethinking what it means to host an event. So that can be at a lot of places. That can be a concert with the 5959 brand on it. That can be an author event at a special venue. So we have a big opportunity to go forth and have these revenue generating events, both through tickets and sponsorship dollars, which we'll talk about here in a minute, by treating the entire city like our stage. It is Emmanuel, but it's also far beyond the walls of Emmanuel. And thinking about that is, you know, something that Leah has been saying this year a lot is when talking about COVID is that the building is closed, but the synagogue is open. And I've really been inspired by that sentence and that sentiment to think about the 5959 thing is based at Emmanuel, but it's also far beyond that. So take that spirit into consideration as we go through this. Who am I? I'm not going to read all of this to you, but essentially you can go to amyguth.com/about and read it if you would like. But in the third paragraph, I note there that I worked at the Tribune, and part of what I did there was develop a newsroom strategy to bring in revenue through events. And we had something called TribU, and I worked at Printers Row Lit Fest and built out the local programming part of that. And that, to me, what was really effective about that was we had such a good sponsorship strategy. So we had events that were sponsored, we had very specific aspects of events that were sponsored. And I think that sponsorship piece is something I'm very, very excited about here, to build out a way to not just sell people the opportunity to put their name on something, but to really build partnerships with people in the community, with brands that are supporting our mission here. So this is where we're at right now. So as I said, as of tomorrow, I'm on week 3 of being employed at Emmanuel. So, and I've organized this into sprints. So a 30, 60, and 90-day sprint. The 30-day is basically got a week left of it. And that's really the theme of that, is just gathering information and strategic planning. The second sprint is building the foundation for success. And then the third sprint is initial events, and that's programming and the big marketing launch. That said, even though we're going to be in sprint 2, some of those sprint 3 elements are already happening just kind of organically, which we'll talk about here in just a bit. So these are the event tracks that we're talking about. Looking at what has been successful for Emmanuel so far, looking at, I did a big analysis of the 92nd Street Y, of Squareball in LA, of Sixth and I in DC, JCCs in top tier cities, and looked at a lot of the programming that museums do and how they've shifted online, and some other kind of event and AV company programming, and really saw what resonated, and looked at where things seem to be struggling and where things seem to be really doing well. And that really helped inform these 6 buckets. So arts and performance, that's going to be dance and films and concerts, things like that. Imagine like a screening of a film and then a conversation with the filmmaker, something like that, or maybe the actors in it, something like that. Authors and ideas, that's maybe some lectures, that's interviews, that's author talks. Going deep is programming about Jewish and interfaith spirituality, but it's outside of clergy events. So it's not necessarily poaching the wonderful things that and religious programming that Emmanuel's doing already. This is, say, something like, for example, every week there's a different lunch and learn with a different rabbi to talk about something connected to that week's Torah portion, something like that. So we would have access to, say, rabbis around the world, right? So things like that, just conversations about spirituality. That could be interfaith dialogue, things like that. Kids and family, social things. There's a lot that falls under the social bucket, but that includes food, like cooking demos, trivia nights, which we did recently, which was so very fun. How-to workshops. There could be peer share, skill share kind of things there. And then that well-being, which is already a category we've seen do really well at Emmanuel: yoga, meditation. And that could even be classes, certifications, things like that. I noticed there's a lot of organizations that offer wellness classes and certifications, like a CPR class, things like that, that a lot of organizations like Red Cross will come and do for free as a fundraising tool. So that's kind of the big buckets for the event tracks. Here's kind of a sneak peek. This is some of the branding that I've been working with a brand consultant on this, who donated her services because she's so very excited about what we're doing here. She has done a ton of interesting work, and I love kind of this idea. I said I want it to be very fresh and very modern, and this is what the beginning of what she's coming back with. So you're seeing it first. It's really just kind of, I just got this yesterday, so it's quite fresh. But I love this idea of using the word find, and not only because I like a good alliteration with find in 59, but I think it is about answering to a journey of finding wellness, finding community, finding connection, and I think that really speaks to a lot of what we're trying to build here. So we'll see some of these circular things here on social media. We'll see merchandise, things like that. I'm very excited about the merch store. I can't wait to wear 5959 t-shirts. So we already have the first event confirmed. That is Michelle Wooker. She's the best-selling author of Gray Rhino, which is an excellent book. I highly recommend it. Her new book is coming out in April, and I'm going to host a conversation with her about that particular book, You Are What You Risk, and that's happening at the Bookseller. And then a few weeks later, we're going to have an event with her talking more broadly about her work, because these two books are very related. So we'll do a virtual program with her. Part of that is the Bookseller is interested in being our kind of official book partner, so that we might find a revenue opportunity and a rev share opportunity for them, in which not only is their name on book events, but it would be an opportunity to pre-order the book. So that could be, for your ticket, you get a signed copy of the book and this author conversation, or special access or something like that. So very excited about where that conversation is going. Also, what is next is the well-being programming. We're going to have, I think, an embarrassment of riches with that. I think we will be able to have very frequent yoga and meditation classes. There's a lot of yoga teachers that are very interested now that they all have the hang of teaching on Zoom. A lot of yoga teachers are looking for interesting new outlets. So I've gotten a lot of interest in that. And then a couple of authors and one filmmaker who is interested, but has sworn me to secrecy so far. So I can't say for sure until it's confirmed, but looks like very soon I'll have a couple of others to share with you. But I'm excited about coming out of the gate with that right away. So as Leah said, there's going to be a couple of working groups that may expand after we get launched and rolling. One is really focused on those strategic partnerships and donor relations. When we think about arts organizations, think of the back of a theater program. It often says kind of donor categories, right? A lot of other, like 92nd Street Y and Skirball and Six and I use that same model, which I think is a really effective one of kind of the, the producer's circle, the whatever, having these kind of different levels of donors. So part of it is cultivating that, but then there's also people on in that working group that are, say, connected to concert venues, that are part of leadership teams at other arts institutions, things like that. So that's about really, in a formal way, forging a partnership. The other main working group is the event execution working group, and that is some really specific roles that I want people to, feel like, hey, I'm putting my talents to use in a great way. That is partly Emmanuel people, but that it can also be outside people, of people that feel passionate about being involved and have a special, skill that they want to lend to it. There's already been a kind of a wave of, hey, I know this great event. So I'm putting together a form that people can fill out. So as people come to you and say, oh, I heard you're kind of around Emmanuel and 5959's a thing. Can my play be there? Or can my band play there? Something like that. Perhaps, but there's certain information I want to make sure that we collect from everybody we're considering so that we can kind of look through all of them with the same filter. So look for that application so that people can submit programming ideas if they are connected to some sort of program. And then of course, volunteer applications that I hope you will help me share and consider filling out yourself. That can be, again, anybody who is feeling, has strong feelings or connections to the arts, wants to be involved in some capacity. There will be some language around that about what kind of roles are available. But that is, I'm going to take a breath now because I just said a lot in a really short amount of time. That's what I got. That's my email, amy@emmanuelkong.org. Please shoot me notes. And that's what I got. Voila. That's where I am right now. And you'll hear more from me in the newsletter that's coming up next week. I'm going to write a little blurb in there, just kind of recapping some of that stuff. And then in coming weeks, you will see the social channels. I'm unveiling a website for 5959. And yes, thank you so much for having me and letting me talk. That's what I got.
Great. Thanks, Amy.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions or ideas? Want to jump on board?
Yeah, I had a question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Amy and Leah. Do we know that? So I can see where something like this could create a great opportunity for Emmanuel. But do we know that sort of Jewish Chicago needs something like this? I mean, there are entities that are doing at least parts of these things, right? So I'm just kind of curious about what the overall landscape has told you all about this being a good niche for Emmanuel.
Yeah, I should have brought some of the decks that we made at Columbia because that was a question that came up and one that we explored at the time. And we actually have a really unique opportunity because we did this wonderful sort of axis that we have a lot of arts programming that is not very Jewish. And then we have very Jewish programming that doesn't have a lot of arts piece to it. And so we have this space that was pretty uniquely our own, that the arts programming didn't have a lot of spiritual elements attached to it, not only Jewishly, but any other religious groups either. And then the Jewish programming wasn't as arts heavy, it was more lecture and educational. So we had this pretty big opportunity. And during our time at Columbia, we did an analysis of that and looked at a lot of demographics of not just Edgewater, but far beyond that, of what we believe that is. And I really do think that once we saw, Leah's got it, there it is. There it is, Leah to the rescue.
So Joy, some of this, if you watch the video on YouTube that I linked to.
Yeah.
So we worked with this consultant. So part of it was the work we did at Columbia, and part of it was the work we did with Plant Moran, who they looked at like drive time, you know, the 15-minute drive time, 25-minute drive time, the number of people who live within walking distance, what is their education, what is their median income. So we did get into that, and I haven't looked at this this is like
in a minute.
This is a very in-depth report from Plant Moran. So the short answer is absolutely, we looked at that. And we looked at the models. We had long conversations with Rabbi Scott Perlow at 92Y, with the programming director at 6th and I, and looked at how they've made them work. And those aren't, obviously they're not perfect analogies to us, but things like Spurtis has been shifting what they offer over the last couple of years. They have new leadership. We see some of the offerings are in the suburbs. So yeah, we've been looking at it and having conversations with people, and we really got to a place where we wanted to try, and we might fail, but at least we will try the idea. But we did a lot of research.
Great, thanks.
Yeah.
And I would add that I think we have a really unique opportunity right now, because so much is virtual, that we have an opportunity to do this at a fairly low cost, right? To get an author in doesn't require a plane ticket right now, it's a Zoom. And so in taking full advantage of that, I think we have an opportunity to get way out ahead of that, really maximize the reach of the marketing efforts to get people used to the idea, so that when in-person things resume, we're already in people's minds as this place to go for these things.
Amy, this is Dave Fleischman. I was wondering if you've been in touch with the Chicago Humanities Festival to possibly offer a manual as a source for some programming that they could connect to.
As a matter of fact, I've personally presented at the Humanities Festival for about the last 6 or 7 years. They were on my list right away to get in touch with them about that very thing. So TBD, I think it's a great idea, and I would love to extend that. I think there's kind of there's two pieces, right? There's the stuff we do in the building, and then there's the stuff that we do with our name on it out in the world. And I'm open to all of those possibilities of how that partnership might look and what we might do with them. But I'm with you on that. I think they would be a great partner to have.
Mm-hmm.
I found the missing slide.
You have it, the axis?
Because it was on
the access, there it is.
Beautiful. It was not in PowerPoint.
That's right.
So that was the trick. Was that we looked at it on secular to Jewish and broad to niche. And we really considered, where do we line up with the JUF, with Spurtis? This was pre-COVID, but so we were also looking at Talia Hall, Ideas Week, North Side cultural venues like Women and Children First, Space and Bookseller. And part of the marketing story is always to find the white space where you can live and make a name for yourself. So this was one of the ways that we looked at that.
Yeah, I think, for those of us on the Mensch bench here who are new to, you know, kind of how we operate. We're trying to take you to behind the curtain. I think this is a bit of an extreme example, but an example nonetheless of how much care we put into things, you know, and sometimes that the care comes at a cost of time because we really dive deep. But I think you'll find when we make a decision on something, particularly things that have an impact, whether it's financially or the trajectory we're trying to go, we dive deep. So again, I really encourage your participation in the committees and the board. And I don't think you'll be disappointed in the amount of thought that goes into, you know, what we're trying to accomplish. Well, we've reached the hour. I think Amy and Leah, you guys really hit home what's going on with 5959. And it's so great to hear the progress that's being made. But there's a lot more to it, obviously, and we'll have to just continue this conversation. But certainly looking forward to what comes out of this. It's very exciting, really exciting. With that, I think it's time to say goodnight. Does anyone have any good and welfare or anything else that we need to cover before we say goodbye?
Dan, I just want to thank Lee and Amy about that 5959 presentation. It was kind of blew me away. It's very exciting. I'm very exciting. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's one of those
Very
things
nice,
that
Scott.
a lot of times people at Emmanuel put their heads down and they get to work and work quietly for a long time, and then we're like, surprise, here's a thing. And Mensch is us trying to get better about bringing everybody along for the ride through the whole process and helping people see all the opportunities to get involved. So thanks for being willing to be surprised, and hopefully next time it's less surprising.
Well, Amy,
Thank you very
so
much.
much for joining. Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
Leah, thank you for joining. I think Sarah Beth has already exited
It was bedtime,
the
yeah.
call, taking care of little ones. But with that, David, did you have something you wanted to add?
Not to ask. I just wanted to make a comment that I sent out an email to everyone to let them know that the office wants to honor the Mensch Bench members and participants and presenters. And I want to remind you all that that's going to be happening Shabbat services, Friday night Shabbat services on the 19th of this month. And we want you all to be able to tune into that. You'll be sent more information as we get close to that.
Great.
Thank you.
Perfect. Well, thanks, everyone. Next week is the last Mensch Bench session, so we'll make it a good one. And thank you all for joining, and have a great week. We'll see you next Monday.
All right.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Thank you, everyone.
Night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy.